everyone, this is Gail from Rainbow Food Rocks, Rainbow Healing Wellness, and Rainbow Herbals. And I'm here with Gail Lynn, the creator of the Harmonic Egg, which I go to in Mesa, Arizona in the United States of America. Gail has been on Coast to Coast with George Norrie talking about what she does, as well as with Regina Meredith from Gaia TV. So without further ado, Gail, what can you tell us about yourself and the egg?
Oh my gosh, thank you, Gail. And it just sounds so funny when you say your name because we have the same name and it's spelled the same. I don't like talking about myself, but I love to inspire people with my journey. So absolutely. I started out as a blue collar family in Detroit as an engineer. Like my dad said, you can work for Ford Motor Company, you can get your pension plan, and you can work on the assembly line, and you can have a really good life for yourself. It didn't sound like fun. It sounded terrible. So I kind of launched into my own journey, but I did get an education in engineering, robotics, and electronics. And then I decided I was going to move to one of the Carolinas. Well, that didn't happen. It ended up being Texas, where I ran an international telecom consulting firm. So I got this international business and engineering, kind of keep that in your mind. And then I end up getting into Hollywood. So then I'm in Hollywood doing a documentary kind of, feature film. It just went to DVD. It didn't go into the actual theaters. And then the little calling in my head was telling me, oh my gosh, you have to build this healing device. And I'm thinking, no. But I've been on a journey of health for so long because I've had Lyme disease, I've had cystic acne, 23 years of migraines. I had thyroid problems, liver problems, reproductive problems, insomnia for 20 some years. And, so kind of like you going on this journey to fix ourselves led us to be teachers and healers. And so I felt like it's so funny, the engineering background, the international business, the film, and I'm thinking, oh, universe, you are so funny. This is hilarious. But I realized in my studies, and I know you study medical medium as well, and some of the studies that in the mentors that you've had are the same as I've had. So when I went down this path of trying to get rid of the migraines, this is kind of how the egg came up. Sound and light therapy, we're vibrational beings of light and sound from source, from God. And the source of migraines is really hard because it can be an internal non-rashing shingles virus. It can be dysautonomia, which is an imbalance in the autonomic nervous system. It can be a food allergy. It can be stress. It can be heavy metals. It can be parasites. So when you go on this journey to figure out how to fix yourself, you get to experience some of the most wonderful people. And there is no one size fits all. So when I ran into the medical medium, I grabbed a bunch of stuff from him. And then I grabbed a bunch of stuff from a parasitologist in the Denver area. And I grabbed a bunch of stuff from a naturopathic doctor in the Boulder area. And so, as you know, you grab all this stuff and you find what works for you, and then you can teach.
And you know what's interesting? You're mentioning medical medium. I actually, when I started my journey, I didn't know medical medium. So I always point that out to people. What was really interesting was I felt like his work was an affirmation of my work, and my work was an affirmation of his work, because I went through taking out slowly 5 main things for my oldest daughter and then applying it to my youngest daughter and my son. People can check out my videos if they don't already know the story. And as I took out each one, just with my oldest daughter, she got better and better and better until the symptoms that get the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder pretty much disappeared. And then the last bit of that was actually using yoga and meditation and going to a school called Living Wisdom School that no longer exists in Seattle, Washington. And so it was just kind of interesting because when I found medical mediums information, it was like, oh my gosh, I had already taken out all those same foods and had success. So I was like, this is what I need so that people understand I'm not cuckoo in the Cocoa Puffs, So,
I know. I loved when I ran into his information. It made so much sense. And when I listened to some of your videos, I was like, Epstein-Barr, Epstein-Barr, and then you said it, you know?
Well, I was
And
going
so
to ask
because
you about Epstein-Barr too, because it sounded wild to me. I had never heard of the reactivation of the Epstein-Barr virus. And I had to go to a naturopathic doctor to get that diagnosis, which I didn't even know existed. And it was only after going through blood work and all these other things, she said, why don't we check for this? And I was like, what in the world is that? She's like, well, did you ever have mono? I was like, no. So, well, most people have mono, they don't even notice it. And I'm like, okay, I had no idea they can hide out in the organs, which is interesting because now that's coming up with this whole other world situation that we can't say on YouTube. And it goes and hides, and then there, you know, so it's kind
well,
of
emotionally
interesting
activated.
similarity.
Yeah, the emotionally activated viral load made so much sense to me because I would see kids that I had seen and you know, in my center. We can't treat or diagnose, as you have said in your videos. And so I saw them from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I had my practice for 10 years. And then all of a sudden they go off to college and then Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr virus. It's that emotionally activated viral load that's been sitting there since they had the strep, since they had the mono, and all of a sudden no one can figure out why they're sick all of a sudden. But there's a lot of stress when you leave high school and go into college. You leave home and then all of a sudden it activates. And I've had herpetic viruses emotionally activated. I was molested by the priest of the parish, not my story anymore, Catholic Church. So that's part of what sound and light therapy does. It releases the story from the cellular memory. So you don't have to be a victim anymore. You don't have to be the, you know, molested child or the daughter of an abusive, you know, father, mother, alcoholic. You don't have to be your story. You can release that. And so, you know, I'm seeing these different activations. And when the priest molested, you know, hundreds of girls, we had to kiss him on the lips and he always had cold sores. So you would know who was in this mix because when they came back from this trip, we all had cold sores. And so whenever there's a big trauma in my life, what used to happen is that cold sore would pop up. And so you see these emotionally activated, trauma activated viral loads rear their ugly heads.
And it's interesting you're mentioning trauma too, because trauma comes up for so many people. I mean, it's kind of hard nowadays to find someone that hasn't encountered some form of trauma. And I was reading a book about trauma from a child's perspective too. I'm not going to get into it on this show, but I feel like what you're offering with the harmonic egg combining, and we haven't gotten into it, but just that combining of like the intention, like say it's to release that trauma and not have it be your story anymore, combined with frequency and light, it can be, in my opinion, very helpful for someone to heal themselves. And so we should actually get into that too. I'd like to be able to talk about, you know, how did you come to, because most people don't know you yet, but you created this harmonic egg, you created this device, you took your engineering background, and I'm so impressed with, you know, how you created this on CAD is my understanding from listening to other things. And you know, I'm so curious, like, how did you decide to make this structure? What did you decide to make this out of? How did it come to you to use music of certain frequencies, which we now know, and many people know, can be extremely helpful depending on what hertz you're vibrating at. And we use the same principles in yoga and meditation as well, increasing our vibrations, increasing our awareness, you know, releasing all those traumas, detoxing. So please do go into all of that as well.
Got about 3 hours. I'm just kidding. So it was more of a less, and most people understand this now as a download. So it was kind of in a dream state that it came through. But it wasn't because I lacked the information. It was all kind of there, the engineering background, and that helped a lot. So I could understand the dynamics of how you can put together a 3D large wooden egg. And so it started out where I used a light box that was in the form of a rectangle. And I really quickly learned that having those angles and not having the way that you can spiral the music around somebody wasn't really effective. A 4-inch foam pad that you would lie on and the speakers underneath was distorting the sounds of the compressed MP3 files. So right away, my engineering mind was kicking in and saying, okay, this needs to be more rounded so you can get that acoustics, the really good acoustics. It needs to be a natural wood, just like when you go into the forest and, you know, have forest bathing. So you're surrounded by natural wood. And I tried originally to have compressed wood, and you really quickly tune into your intuition with sound and light therapy. And I immediately could hear the little voices of all the different types of wood. So it sounded really chaotic with using a bunch of different types of compressed wood. So I am now graduated to pure walnut on my commercial egg. And then we have a home unit that's pure oak on the inside because of the spiritual properties. So I'm learning and growing more spiritually with the properties of wood. So the egg is birch and maple, and it's beautiful together. And you need to have that kind of nature. You don't want it bouncing off of metal or cement or, you know, any kind of plastic. And we didn't want any kind of EMFs inside, but the egg acts as a bit of a Faraday cage, which is really surprising to me. But I think it's the sacred geometry and the intention. So even though we have speakers inside and a subwoofer on the underneath the chair for a sonic type of massage, you get that vibration. You can put a tri-field EMF meter in there and you're not getting any of the EMFs. So to me, I can take that meter right outside where there's an amplifier and get plenty of EMF, but not inside. So it was really amazing to me, the sacred geometry of it. And then learning from Edgar Casey, you know, sound and light together will be he said in the 40s, a powerful modality for the future, just bringing those two forces together. And then as you were talking about the frequencies, I didn't really focus, and I never resonated with 528 or 396 or 7 whatever. I resonated more with the waveforms of instruments. So we consciously created all the music for the harmonic egg around the waveforms of instruments. Example is the flute has a very simple sound wave. It's just a real kind of a little tick and up. And it seems to affect people with fatty liver diseases, and then orange light for depression. So then I started studying the chakras and the lights that bring the chakras back into balance, and the instruments that bring the chakras back into balance. And we started creating protocols for every single thing that could be a malady from an imbalance in a chakra. Because we also know that we couldn't make claims and we couldn't violate anything with our wonderful FDA. And so when we say, when the third eye chakra is out of balance, it could cause brain tumors. So bringing that back into balance, you use these pieces of music and this color light. And so we found that there was a correlation with everything with the chakras, which is also kind of the nervous system when you look at the spine.
Yeah, and that's really interesting how, you know, that combination. So I noticed that too when I go in. So I've used the egg, oh my gosh, for many, many months now. And initially I used it almost every week, and then I kind of just started doing once a month. And my experience going in there, I felt like the first time it allowed a huge release. And it had to do, again, like you described, with the music. And I'll even back up, like just going into it, I can validate also that it does cut off all signals. I'm not even fully in the egg, and my phone signal is off. Like it cuts off the Wi-Fi. And I was thinking when you were talking earlier about how when I worked in the garden, I just recently moved, but when I was in the garden, I would notice that when I was working in the plants, that all my signals would get cut off. So probably something like you said with the design, but definitely the wood also is probably contributing to that. And then it kind of is amplified. But getting back to, like, I have experienced inside the egg where, I mean, sometimes I am just crying and I don't know where it comes from, where it just releases something that I didn't realize I needed to let go of. And other times I'm in there and I have like the most vivid, powerful meditation. And each time is different, which is really interesting too. Like people might think, oh, I'm going to go into this and this is going to happen. I say it's like a journey. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen. You're going to go in and you're going to discover something that you may or may not have known. And it's fun. And so I was thinking too, like, what was the other? Oh, there's this ability for you to put the chair in zero gravity. How did you come up with that?
So I read a lot of white papers from doctors, and some of the doctors are using zero gravity chairs, and they say that it takes all the pressure off the spine when you have your feet at the level of your heart or above. And so some of the yogis go in and they want it the inversion. So they'll go lean way back so their feet are way above their heart. And I think it's a beautiful release, and it's a great meditative position. And so I tested a lot of chairs, and I tested it with a lot of healers, from medical doctors, naturopathic doctors, chiropractors, and DOs, to also acupuncturists and quantum healers and Reiki masters. And they said, you want it to recline enough to open the heart space. So I tested 9 different chairs before I came up with this one that I have. And just the way that it operates is perfect for inside the egg. And then also the timing inside. So it's 40 minutes of music and 10 minutes of silence. And we tested that with these same characters that I just mentioned. And you start doing hours and hours and hours of energy work, your body starts to reject it. Your body will actually flip and start pushing it away. So, I try to get people to be discerning when they're doing energy work, because there's a lot of, let me just say, energy medicine junkies. And we have to be really careful, because they're all good by themselves, but we need to respect. We need to respect acupuncture, and we need to respect Reiki, and we need to respect massage, because you can't do it in one day. I've literally seen people die. I had a lady who was very fearful of the cancer diagnosis that she had. So she went from energy work in Germany to energy work in Oregon to energy work in Kansas to energy work with me to energy work in Mexico. And when I used to get my migraines, I would get the ocular migraine. So I would lose my vision. And she came in one day and I couldn't see her face. I could only see her neck below. And of course I rubbed my eyes, because I'm like, great, I think I'm getting a migraine, which I don't get anymore. But I went into my office kind of scared, and I called my medical intuitive, and he said, she's going to be gone in a couple weeks. She's just bones. And so I went back in the room, and she said, oh, what did he say? And it is not my responsibility to tell her that. So I really freaked out. I said, he said, why don't you take a break from some of the stuff that you're doing and go see your grandkids? So she did. And I went to her funeral 14 days later, because she died like 9 or 10 days later. And you get your body spinning out of control. It doesn't know what you want. And it's very dangerous. And so I've done a lot of presentations and education about how you can poison yourself and hurt yourself with energy medicine. People are not tuning into their bodies. They're not listening to their bodies. And so that's why I give you so much credit for what you do, because you're trying to get people to listen to their bodies. Does my body get affected by eggs? Does it get affected by corn? Does it get affected by, there's different blood types. So certain blood types might have a reaction to certain foods. So there is no one size fits all. So I wanted to create the egg around a system that communicated with the human energy field inside. So the egg energy communicates with the human energy and finds the weaknesses, and you'll feel pinpricks in your shoulder. And you're like, I did not even tell this practitioner I had a shoulder injury. I'm feeling it. Knees, ankles, you'll feel the crying, because you need to release a trauma. When we hold in emotions, that's what causes disease. We need to spend more time with gratitude and love instead of resentment and anger and vengefulness and hate and all these negative emotions, because that's where disease lives. And so the egg can elevate you to a different level of vibration, get you closer to your higher self so you can hear the messages and really bathe in the beauty of life and what life's about, and what an honor it is to be here now on this planet. And we should be supporting each other and loving each other more.
I totally agree. And I like that you covered not being an energy junkie, because it is really important with each modality to separate out Even I myself find, like, if I'm doing my yoga and my meditation and my kriya, well, then that's my modality for the day. Like, I'm not going to go and mix that with a whole bunch of other things. I am a master Reiki practitioner, and I'll prep myself with that, but and then I'll direct the energy, which is an interesting concept that I can get into another time. Just really harnessing energy, but that's about the extent of it. I'm not going to like then go, okay, let me go to the egg. And then, in fact, with the egg, I remember being told to wait like 5 days before doing anything else, and to drink a lot of water. And I have found, I can personally attest, is that I'm really thirsty afterward. And depending on what the intention is, if I have an intention, say to detox, for instance, like I did in the very beginning when I started, when the session is over, the other practitioner, I usually notice that there's some kind of a smell in the egg too, which is really interesting. And it can sometimes, but not always, it kind of indicate what's going on with the person. Like, I've heard stories, it hasn't happened for me, but I've heard stories of certain people smelling like cotton candy afterward, if they had maybe a lot of sugar or some kind of yeast issue. Or maybe it just smells like metal, if they were detoxing heavy metal. So I just found that kind of interesting, and I wanted to add that as well. And speaking of water, I'm going to drink some water.
Yeah, well, when you balance the autonomic nervous system and you're not stuck in fight or flight, and your rest and digest and your fight or flight are in balance, or they call the parasympathetic and sympathetic parts of your nervous system, the body can heal naturally. So this isn't a magic egg. The body's magic. And the body, when in the right environment, can heal naturally and beautifully and wonderfully. And you can have everything that your heart desires. You can have health and abundance and love, and you can have everything that you want. And so a lot of people will say, well, you can only have 2 of the 3. I had a guy tell me in 1998, he said, Gail, there's a triangle. There's health, there's love, and there's money. You can only have 2 of the 3. And I'm a Scorpio. I know you're August baby, so I think you're a Leo. I'm a Scorpio, so do not tell me I cannot have something or do something, because then I'm going to say, get out of my way, because here I go. So I have it all. And I feel like it's connection to your higher self. It's sitting in meditation and silence and listening to what you need and following the breadcrumbs of life. That's what the journey is about. It's so fun. It's like, oh, breadcrumb over there. Oh, now it's over there. Okay, I'm going to kind of follow these breadcrumbs, and look what has happened. Engineering to telecom, from Michigan to Texas to California to Denver. I've traveled all over the world following the breadcrumbs and bringing back the ancient wisdom from Egypt, from Greece, from Indonesia. When I brought that all back and embodied that into the egg.
And 2 things came to mind when you were talking too, is, environment is stronger than will, is something that we always say, especially with a lot of my practices. And I just lost my thought. There was something else I wanted to touch upon that you were talking about. The journey. Just to kind of empathize with you, this wasn't originally my background, what I'm doing now. I started off in foreign languages, and I had studied at least 5 other languages. And I loved traveling. I loved doing fine arts. I worked in hotel management and helping open up school, and teaching ESL and helping in school districts. So my background, and I also worked for local government in Washington. So my background was something totally different, but then I had kids, and I had already been working with kids from mobile infants up. And so when all this came about, all these other skills actually came to play to kind of help. And then once I was unwell, I went on a journey to learn all these different modalities, and it became like this fun, like, okay, I might be really unwell, but I'm excited to learn yoga teacher training. I'm excited to learn about Reiki. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, but okay. And, as I've gone along and grown and grown and grown, it's like, I get to this point now, I'm like, oh, wow, I really see, I see it all. I understand on a whole different level. And yet I have to recognize and appreciate that whole journey that got me to this point. And especially with the world situation that unfolded in the last 3 years, if I didn't go through all of that, I wouldn't have been ready. It's like it had to happen the way it happened to bring me to this exact moment, or even right now to this exact moment of the two of us sitting here and chatting. So I'm glad you touched upon the journey, because I do always think and keep in mind, like, wow, it's amazing. You never know with all these different things that we do and encounter how it's going to come to play later on.
Well, yeah, and it's what we broadcast too. So if people are out there going, "Oh, my life sucks," and and I'm in this bad relationship, it's what you broadcast. It's what you attracted. So there's only you to blame, and you can rebroadcast a different message. So I was broadcasting, what was it recently in a body code session? I was broadcasting, "No one respects me," and people were not respecting me, and I was noticing. And I thought, okay, I must be broadcasting this. This is not their fault. This is my fault. And so I had a body code session and we shifted that to I am respected, and everything changed. So it's crazy how this energy works. And I wanted to say too, I worked for a doctor's office when I was 17. I got fired. They were prescribing people so many drugs. It was ridiculous. They were giving out pain pills every 15 days, and it was supposed to be every 30 days. And they were giving out, all these old people were coming in for speed under the guise of diet pills. And I was watching them gain weight, and, I'm questioning the doctors. I'm 17, right? And so they fired me because who am I to question the doctors? But this came up again yesterday. This experience that I had for a year when I was 17 was so influential on my life, because it even came up again yesterday. I was listening to a guy named Dr. Kevin MD. It's a podcast. And he said, if your doctor doesn't listen to you, find another doctor. You are not a number. You are not to be treated as a disease. You are a person. You are an essential, he said, an essential person in your community, and you should be respected. And I remember one of the 3 doctors I worked for, he always had a 3-hour wait. They booked them every 15 minutes, just as they booked all the doctors every 15 minutes. And he would have a 3 and 4-hour wait. And if you didn't know about him, you were irritated, and you would come up to the window every 5 minutes. When's my appointment? It was an hour ago. It was 2 hours ago. It was 3 hours ago. Most of his patients were regulars because he listened to them. He sat and, I'll say, shot the shit with them and heard them. And he had more success in helping his patients than the other 2 doctors who were like, you're a number, you're an amount of money that I'm going to make every 15 minutes. So this Dr. Kevin is now talking about, this is where we need to go back to. We need to treat our patients as essential members of the communities that we work and live in. And, that really resonates with me. And that's why every single egg center, as you know, where you go in Mesa, Arizona, they're lovely. And they treat you with the utmost respect and love and gratitude, and ask you for your intention and what do you want to work on. And this is how we've done this business model. And it's just so beautiful. That's how we need to shift the healthcare model.
I agree with you. And I was just thinking, a lot of the audience might not know. I've gone through body code, but they probably don't know what body code is. Could you tell them a little bit about body code? Because I know that it's often offered with the egg sessions and the locations.
Well, and I don't claim to know how to explain it, but what I can say is that there is a model and there is training that a body code practitioner goes through to help to guide you to find out what you're broadcasting, to find out where in the subconscious things are hidden, to find out if it's a physical, emotional, environmental kind of malady that's going on. And it's pretty accurate. I'm sure there's people who have had less training and are not as accurate as people who have had more training and they're more accurate. But if you really pay attention, there's going to be little gems of gold for you in every session for you to shift your reality. So I don't know that I can explain it any better than that. If you want to add to that.
Well, I've actually experienced a body code session, and what I found really interesting was that a magnet was used, and it was brought up and down along the spine for certain things to clear certain things, and sometimes more times were needed than others. And earlier you were talking about broadcasting, and to me, I see it as like magnetism, right? Like we're attracting, and just like you said, broadcasting, we're attracting what we're putting out. And so, the concept of actually using a magnet to pull, whatever needs to be cleared is kind of interesting, because it is magnetism. And I just kind of tie that into electromagnetism and just the whole, field of energy around us. Some people call it the auric field and such. And so I just always find all these different things fascinating, and they kind of all come together. Like after a while, you see them all like a ball of yarn, kind of like weaved together. So yeah, I'm thankful that you explained that to the audience a little bit better, because they might.
And I've only done remote sessions, so mine have been remote, so not even in person. That's how powerful energy is. You can do remote sessions and feel it and experience it. And as long as I think both practitioner and the client, if you will, are in a neutral place, tuned into their higher selves, I think that information can come through and it can be really beautiful. So the protocols have to be really strict, because I find that many healers will bring a negative energy, which then kind of rubs off on the client. And it's very hard to be a human being and not have emotions. But when you're doing this kind of work, you really need to be neutral. I know I have left chiropractors and cried. I've left massage therapists and been in fear, all which was their energy, because of my picking that up. And being an empath is not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a superpower. And so I love my superpower, but you need to know that it's not your energy when you leave there. My crying, I later found out the chiropractor was going through a divorce. And I later found out the massage therapist was losing her home. So that financial fear was in me. I was like, where is this coming from? And so when you investigate, you find out that this is something you picked up from them, which is very irresponsible when they're working on people who don't understand energy.
And sometimes I'm not even sure if they're aware, they should, in my opinion, be aware, but I'm not even sure if they're aware. Like, say it's a massage therapist, that therapist may or may not even be aware that they are imbuing their energy in that person. So I think that there also needs to be some kind of level of awareness brought up for them. But to your point, I've done remote Reiki, and in many instances, I found it to be more powerful than even being in person. And so I found like there's one thing to actually put your hands on someone. There's another thing to have your hands hovering, in which you can oftentimes feel the tingling of the energy coming out of the palms. But then the remote, I almost would say that's more powerful. Most people are more skeptical about this. I have found that with my clients, that has been even way more powerful. And I have done some, maybe we classify it as miraculous things through that. And to your point, though, I go through this whole procedure before I work on someone to make sure I've cleared myself, I've cleared my space, I've cleared any gemstones around me. I've gone through my own like yoga, meditation, all those practices to just get myself in that state of mind and be totally neutral, like you described, and clear and clean and open-hearted to help. But I also am totally aware and have experience just like you, and I'm highly empathic, just like you, where I've picked up someone else's, and I have to recognize this isn't mine. And I have to figure out, okay, now how am I going to get this off me? Because it's not mine. I realize it, but now okay, sometimes it's easy just to realize that sometimes it's like, oh, I need some extra help. And that's where, the egg can come in too. If you need that extra little bit, like you're doing all the work and you're like, okay, I can't get this out of me or off me. I don't know. That can be nice as well. I also use salt baths. That's helpful as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Right. And Regina Meredith taught me about mint soap, and she uses this procedure where she literally blows up, she asks them to leave, and if they don't, she can blow them up. But mint soap in the shower is really powerful too. And it's about intention. But that's the thing, these massage therapists need to be taught this. They need to be taught how to be responsible with their energy, not just giving a massage, but also not transferring your energy or receiving a transfer of energy. Because you end up seeing a lot of wounded healers, a lot of sick healers, because they've taken and taken and taken and taken and taken and never released. And all of a sudden it kind of explodes on them.
Yeah,
It's very sad.
I know
It's
some
very
healers
sad.
that they're amazing healers, and then people say to me, well, if they're such an amazing healer, how did they get so ill? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's a whole separate discussion. You didn't realize how much they took on, and they may or may not have gotten that all off them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mint soap. It's interesting you brought that up. This is gonna sound weird, but I wash all the time with mint soap. I actually bottle my own essential oils and make body products. And I have my mint, which is coming from Nisarga Organic Farms in India, being used in the soap, which I shower with daily. So it's interesting you touched about mint soap. And I sell it, but I only have like a few left. But I do sell it as well. I'll have more soon enough.
You need to repackage it as body clearing soap.
I know it. So yeah, now that you said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that, So I'm gonna have to put that on my Rainbow Herbals website, like body clearing peppermint soap, mint soap.
I love it. I love what you do. You're so gifted and talented on so many different levels. It's so crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, and she does this, and she does this, and she does this. You're so amazing.
Oh, thank you. All of this truly came out of necessity. It just built up and built up and built up. It was like you read about me about the Rainbow Food Rocks cookbook, which came out of necessity for my kids. And I moved to Arizona, and everyone's like, you have to write down these recipes. We need them. So I created 128 recipes that were wheat-free, dairy-free, corn-free, soy-free, egg-free, gluten-free, but not taste-free. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? So then the world situation happens, and little did I know that all that I went through was going to come to play. And so then there I was, and I was starting to bottle essential oils, and people like, I have a friend named Dr. Paul Cottrell, were like, oh, I'd like for you to make these body products. I think I don't want to be someone bottling oils, making body products for people. Like, I'll do it for myself, but I didn't think I'd want to do that. And so then it just became this thing. Well, people started asking, just like with the book, they started asking, okay, all right, well, then I'll start carrying an assortment. I already use them daily, and I use them more in the Eastern way than the Western way, because I incorporate them in almost everything I do. Like I'm diffusing right now wintergreen as we're chatting. In the morning, I'm using them. I put certain ones on, or I make a leg cream that I use. I have an even better bar that is for cuts, scrapes, and bruises. My daughter uses daily on her arms. It's just like every part of our life, there's some kind of oil being used. It's really interesting. And they're also food grade. So I use them in recipes. I have like a coffee one to make the most amazing chocolate buttercream frosting. Oh my gosh. I digress. So anyhow, so it's just
I want to try some of your stuff for sure. I'm more of the alchemist herbal stuff. So I'm growing yarrow and putting it in my smoothie, and I'm growing lemon balm, and I use that when I need it, and people come over, I make little tinctures for them, and they're like, what is this? I'm like, just drink it. It's cayenne and it's lemon balm. And they're like, what's it going to do? I'm like, it's going to get rid of this headache. It's going to open up the blood vessels. And so I'm more of the herbal alchemist.
Well, I actually had to dive into that also, because then when everyone went into shelter in place, I started growing a garden. I thought, okay, I had this vision of 3 phases, then it became 4 phases, then 5 with fruit trees going around. Then I did a potato box. So here I was growing my own food, seeing how I can incorporate some of my recipes, taking the garden goodies, and oh, what a learning curve, trying to make videos. I hadn't been on social media ever until I created the book. So until like 2018, 2019. So that was a learning curve. How to do everything for writing a book and publishing it, self-publishing, learning curve. How to create a YouTube channel, learning curve. How to manage Instagram, learning curve. Like, what a journey, because that wasn't my realm. I was totally in the private. You couldn't find me anywhere until 2018, 2019. Like, there was no way you could find Gail Angeles. And then I had to come out there, and but yeah, each thing, I mean, even my home baking, I sell cookies, New York style Italian cookies and such, and I go to events and make baked goods and what have you. All of that came because somebody would ask me, oh, well, do you do this? Could you do this for me? Could you do that for me? And so it's just like, okay, well, I just keep expanding and growing and learning how to do a website, and it's so much learning, but it's been great. So thank you for,
No, I totally get it. I mean, even with doing the movie project that's kind of where my experience came in. And like, you have 5 different companies in doing a movie project. First, you have the business plan and the raising the money. Then you have the, script writing and pre-production, production, post-production, editing, marketing. It was all a completely different company. It felt like you didn't have the same team. It wasn't the same skill set. It was completely different. So I totally can relate. And then starting the egg business and building my egg empire. We have now 130 centers in 10 countries and 4 continents. How did that happen? I mean, it's just a large wooden egg, but I will tell you, there's some magic about it that I don't understand. We have had an egg make it through the Marshall fires in the middle of Louisville, Colorado. There was an egg center there, never touched it. Fort Myers hurricane, never touched the egg center. Tornadoes in Garland, Texas. It leveled a building in the same parking lot, but didn't touch that building with the egg in it. And then a flood in Michigan. So it's almost like the nature and the universe knows this is a sacred, magical piece of something. And storms are going around it, hurricanes, floods. It's so insane. So there's something magical about it that I don't completely understand, but it amazes me on a daily basis.
It kind of makes me think about yogic powers in a sense. Like if you bring yourself to that frequency, so these devices, have the ability to, what is it? They go up to 1,100 hertz or how
Gene
high?
has tested them at 1,300 hertz just by themselves right now. But the more eggs that reach the planet, the more powerful they all become. They're a self-organizing conscious technology.
And there's pretty much, in my opinion, consciousness in everything. So when you take that and you're making it out of the wood, like you described, and you have all those high frequencies, I almost think back to these stories like, I think it's in Autobiography of a Yogi too, where just certain things, like if you hold a certain energy, that nothing can touch you. Like I've heard stories of people out in the wilderness and the animals either gravitate to them peacefully, but the harmful ones won't even harm them or come near them, even if they're right there, because of that vibration that they're giving off and that frequency they're giving off. So it just makes me think, like when you're telling me that story, I was like, whoa, wow, that really is significant. I'm glad you pointed out. I did not know about the storms just going around them like that.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh my God, Fort Myers is getting like totally trashed. I'm like, and I kept calling the woman. I'm like, how's the egg? How's the egg? She's like, oh, it's fine. But everything around was destroyed. And because I worry about my egg family, my egg guardians. I worry about the product itself. They all feel like a little part of me, which is a little bit scary. But they're just we're a big family. It's more of the divine feminine business model. So, and I recently was working on a dolphin in Key Largo. And so this whole mammal energy has been coming to me. I was able to really communicate with the dolphin, and she's been in captivity for 14 years. And when I worked on her, because she had a medical condition, I felt like she empathetically took it from somebody else and wasn't ever taught in captivity how to release that energy. Her handlers didn't know how to teach her. You let that go. You don't hold on to it. So she was so grateful to be able to be worked on, because she's always so giving. So there was no balance in her life. She was always giving and she was never receiving. So you got to have that as a human, as an animal. There has to be some balance. So I was trying to teach her how to also receive. And so that was a beautiful expression. And then this morning I had a little altercation with some people online. Apparently they're releasing a orca whale. I don't know if it's fake news or not, but it seems legit, in Florida after being in captivity for over 50 years. And to me, that's a big no-no, because I don't think there's a human on the planet that can teach this orca how to live in the wild after 50 years in captivity, where somebody was always feeding it. And somebody said something about, well, we sure hope these humans prepare this orca to go live in the wild. And I said, because I'm a Scorpio, they ain't that smart. And somebody misinterpreted that, of course, that I was saying the orca wasn't that smart. So then I got attacked. Oh, you're stupid. You're this, you're that. And I don't care, whatever. But I realized that people don't use their brain. If you're going to release an animal back into the wild after 50 years of captivity, they're not going to know how to hunt. They're not going to know how to survive on their own. They're not going to know how to find friends. If you think about keeping somebody, and there's a lot of examples that will come to people's minds, that you've never been out of your home, you've been, somehow enslaved or something like that. After 50 years, how would you even exist in society? And on a smaller scale, if you take a cat that you've given a bowl of food to every day, and then you put them outside with a bunch of mice, they're not going to know how to be a mouser. And so it just was really interesting how people don't think. And we need to have more of that critical thinking in our society, to listen to our own bodies, to use more common sense, to really, really think about what that media story is spinning. And to me, it felt immediately, oh my gosh, this animal is a financial burden. It's going to die soon. We need to get rid of it. Let's just say we're the heroes and we're going to free Willy and we're doing this great thing. But really behind that spin is we don't want to keep paying for this big, huge animal. So we're just going to throw it out. And it just hurt my heart.
Yeah, I can feel that because I'm very empathic too. And
yeah.
And I totally empathize with you with what you're saying. It doesn't make any sense. I homeschool, and I always say to my kids to ask questions, and I'm always having them just think about things. Not they even have to have them. They are doing it just because of the way they're being brought up. And so I love that you touched upon critical thinking, and I think that is really important. And it was interesting that you mentioned dolphins. There are stories of dolphins doing amazing things for people with the frequencies. And there's a history of dolphins and humans working together. Some people might discredit this, but there is some talk about dolphins and aquatic versions of humans, we could call them. Maybe mer creatures would be a more appropriate word, of them working together. But if nothing else, we have seen dolphins help humans get fish, for instance, and then they toss back the fish. Or dolphins perform some kind of healing for a human. And I really like that you're aware and you touched upon how animals take on very often whatever's going on between the one that oversees the animal and the animal. Like people have pets, a lot of people have pets, and many people don't realize that the pets will, so they'll take that off of us and they'll take on that burden. And then the pet gets unwell and or passes away and dies. And people are just like, oh, I don't know what happened. Everything was fine. And all of a sudden, they were unwell. But then if we think back and look, and then we can analyze, oh my gosh, yeah, there was this big thing. And then, it helps the person through it. And then the animal just couldn't take it. Nobody thought, oh, well, let's clear the animal, help the animal get clear. It could be something as small as like a mouse or a gerbil, or something as large as a horse. But this does happen. It has come up a lot. It has come up a lot. And I'm curious, do you also work on other animals besides dolphins, or was this a one-time occurrence? How did that happen?
I got a horse when I was I guess I was in my 40s. So I've had her for 14 years. I'm 52. You guys can do the math. She came to me to teach me nonverbal communication. And that's when I started to work with the autistic community, a lot of the nonverbal autistic community. And come to find out, after talking to Susie Miller, who wrote the book Awesomeism, she said that the pod was created for the autistic community on a lot of levels. And so, yes, I've worked with horses, dogs, cats, and I talked to the toads on my land and the lizards, and, they kind of just show up, and I look them up by their spiritual meaning because I also know that they have a message for me. But I've tried to help people with their animals because it's exactly 90% of what is wrong with your animal they took from you, and you're not allowing them to release it. So I had a lady at the barn, they had a draft horse, and the draft horse, they usually like to be in pairs, at least the draft horses. And I'm not going to mention the horse's name because somebody could relate it. But this horse was always calling to me, calling to me, calling to me. And these people were doctors, and they know everything. And so a horse passed away, and they're like, we want that stall because that's a better stall. So they immediately put the horse in that stall. Before they smudged it, cleared it, nothing. The horse ended up with lung problems, and they brought the vet in, and this was a brand new horse for them. And they just left the horse with the vet, didn't stay with the horse. The horse was around really strange energy in a new place with new owners. And I said, you know, I think you should sit with the horse and be with the horse. The next thing you know, my life was being threatened because I was telling them how to take care of their horse, but I want to be a voice for the animal. And so I had to leave the barn because my life was threatened there. And I just felt so bad for this draft horse because obviously lungs are about grief. And so right away, putting a horse in another stall that a horse just died in without clearing it, and then not knowing how to deal with the lung problems, which is grief. So I've helped a lot of animals that way. And I really want to help the humans so that they can help their own animals. I've had other animals with lung problems always relate it to a grief around an adopted animal that lost their owner, and no one explained to the animal why they're now in foster care with some other owner. And I'm able to talk to the animal and say, okay, the lady didn't want to give you away, but she had to because she was very sick. And so now you're with this person, and the lung issues immediately go away. They only know love, so they can heal so quickly that we have to give them the right environment to heal in as well.
And again, you notice environment comes up, environment and keeping things clear. And, these same themes come up over and over. And I noticed, like, to your point about frogs, even earlier too, like I can find, and I have a tough time with if I have to go to like a zoo or something, because each animal I'm connecting with, it is so overwhelming for someone like me, because I don't just go, oh, look at the animals by. It's like, I'm connecting with this one, then I'm connecting with that one. And then I come home and I'm just totally drained because I've gone. And so like, even the frog though, that you were mentioning, like I have a frog that just shows up on the doorstep at night, and I'll connect with the frog, to your point. And it's just like, oh, they have consciousness, they are aware, they are living beings, and so many people just take it for granted. Like, oh, it's just a frog.
I don't know.
It's just a cricket. It's
Right.
horse,
Yeah,
like,
I can't kill anything. Feel so bad. I'm like a spider. I'm like, go out the door.
Well,
I have toads right
a
now.
spider has a feeling. Well, if you go to, and I don't do this, I put them in jars and put them outside, but if you go to smash it, it's going to run away. Obviously, it doesn't want to be killed. It has the realization and the understanding, right? So it's like, if we take that thought and just go, okay, well, with everything, they understand, they have the ability to understand. They might not speak the way you and I do, but telepathically or just along, energetically and consciously, they are there. They're fully aware.
I have out in my property here, which is kind of like the high desert of Colorado. It's literally all sand. You would think we're Colorado mountains, but it's all sand. And so we have foxes and coyotes. The foxes and the coyotes have their own territories. You either have foxes or you have coyotes. They don't seem to live together here. So I have the foxes, and then I have toads. Well, foxes love toads. So I feel bad for the toads. I mean, it's natural selection, and they all got to eat. But I tell the toads when I see them at night, I'm like, be careful tonight because the foxes are going to be looking for you. But I had these baby foxes last year, and they were very irresponsible. And I had a toad head here and a leg here and some guts there. And I was like, guys, listen, if you're going to kill something, you need to eat it all. And it never happened again, but I called it the July Toad Massacre because it was horrible. But it was all the babies. They were just playing with the toads and not eating them. But I literally went outside and had a conversation, and it never happened again. So did they hear me?
It's highly likely. I mean, it's amazing when we get into these realms of consciousness and energy. So I feel like we're just scratching the surface of understanding. And in the education system, I really wish that there was more of an interest in allowing children to explore this more. I have this vision of one day, this will be the norm. But I think that like we're scratching the surface and there's still yet so much more. And every day we're always discovering more. But bringing it back to the harmonic egg, I know you and I could chat for hours. What's in the name? I don't know. The joy and Gail, I guess.
Right, joy, right? Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. But no, I mean, we can learn a lot from just energetically tuning into ourselves. And when we do that, we're going to know what foods aren't good for us. When we love ourselves, we're not going to want to eat those crappy foods. We're not going to want to hurt ourselves. We're not going to want to be in toxic relationships. So when we can love ourselves, truly love ourselves, disease doesn't live in the place of love. And I think when we can truly love ourselves, we can tune into all the healthy things that we can do for ourselves. And then we can also learn, once we listen to ourselves, then we can hear the animals.
Yes. And, if one needs help with healing themselves or one needs a little boost, I think that that's where, kind of bringing it back to what you've created. I mean, you're offering modalities. I'm saying modalities plural because there's a harmonic egg and then there's also body code that often you see together at the centers. You're offering these modalities that can help someone heal themselves and it help them, raise their consciousness, raise their awareness. So I think that's wonderful. How can people either get in touch with you or find the harmonic egg or, is there anything else that I haven't covered that you want to make sure people are aware of?
Oh my gosh. Well, I wrote a book. I guess I should promote
Okay,
my
we'll
book.
plug that for sure.
Well, there's that. So in the book, though, I cover how I got to where I am today. And then we cover how sound has scientific evidence behind it and how light has scientific evidence behind it. And then at the end of the book, I share with you what chakras need to be in balance for what maladies that you might have. And so I share that. And what I'm studying now is how can color bring your vitamins back into your body? The frequency of colors can actually replenish vitamins and minerals for you. So I cover all that in the book, but harmonicegg.com. And then you can find any location there and just go to the locations tab. So for me, I'm trying to make sure that all of my egg guardians and all of my egg family are in abundance. So I'm always promoting their centers. I don't need to sell eggs. They sell themselves. Once you go try it, you really kind of want to buy one. So then I created a home unit and then I created music. So if you can't afford to do $100 or $120 session, you can buy some of the consciously created music that has song sheets. And it'll tell you, here's the instruments that are used, here's the tones that they're created in, here's the organs and the chakras that they will invoke and help. And then here's the color intentions that you can eat those colors like you, eating the rainbow, rainbow food rocks. So you can eat the rainbow and replenish a lot of things and nurture yourself with sound and color. So, I mean, harmonicegg.com, blog page, videos, all my interviews are on the blog page. So you can hear me, blah, 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 talk about all this stuff.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming here and telling me about everything that you've learned in your journey. And, I would chat with you more, but I know the audience usually does well with just 1 hour. So we'll keep it at 1 hour.
I know. Sometimes less. My attention span's not that long even.
Aw. Well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you.